The manhunt for Europe's most wanted terrorist continues tonight. German authorities confirmed earlier that fingerprints of the Muslim suspect at large were found inside the truck used to kill 12 people in Berlin on Monday. Dozens were injured. We also learned today 2 of the injured were Americans. The suspect is a 24-year-old refugee from Tunisia. The attack overseas has renewed concerns about immigration here at home. President-elect Donald Trump says it proves the need to restrict some Muslim immigrants from coming to America. A man who interrogated the mastermind of 9/11 agrees. Dr. James Mitchell was assigned to question Khalid Sheikh Mohammed more than a decade ago. He says KSM warned back then about the very kind of attacks we're seeing today. Mohammed also predicted Islamists would try to take over the world through immigration.
This is exactly the sort of thing that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed had predicted. He and I were talking about what he saw as upcoming trends in terror attacks, that the easiest way to win the long battle to take over the world with Sharia law was actually through immigration and by outbreeding non-Muslims. He said that like-minded jihadi brothers would immigrate to Western democracies and to the United States. Then, when the time was right, they would rise up and attack.
So, Greg, KSM warned it years ago. ISIS promised it fewer years ago. It's happening.
Yeah, and you say in the opening, you know, it has people talking. It has us talking. What bothers me is it really doesn't have enough people talking about this. You know, if the world were a jewelry store, America is the Hope Diamond, and you don't have just a velvet rope around it in a glass box. You have to think seriously about how you keep that thing secure. Our problem with America is everything's now team sport politics. You've got to be either pro-security or pro-tolerance, when actually they complement each other. If you want to have the world's most diverse country in the history of the world, it has to be safe. Why are people running from terrible places around the planet? Because this place is safe. It's less dangerous. There's less rape and assault and murder. So they come here. In order to continue that relationship with the people coming here, we have to make sure it is safe. So the pro-security, pro-tolerance together.
But you don't want to change the nature of the country by saying that we are going to somehow build a wall around the entire United States. Not that we
I
already...
would build a dome.
We are already blessed.
I would build a dome.
No, I would not. I think we are blessed by the 2 oceans on either side.
We are.
But even more, I think we are blessed by the idea that we see ourselves as a refuge for people who are fleeing the kind of violence.
You're doing the team sport thing again.
No, I'm not.
I said pro-tolerance, pro-security.
I really am.
But you went to the pro-tolerance part. I'm saying you can have both.
No, I did this. But the way that you bring them together requires that there be rigid kind of security that eliminates a certain class of people.
Should there be none? Should the borders be completely open? I mean, there are people who say we should.
Open.
But your point, if you're saying, well, we shouldn't restrict this group. Should we restrict any group? Should we just have no border?
Of course not.
Well,
look, we have limits on immigration.
Who makes that decision?
I'm sorry?
Where do you draw the line, and who makes that decision?
I think we as an American people make that decision. That's why we have limits on immigration, but we treat all people, we don't even treat all people the same. I will say that up front. Our immigration laws initially clearly favored people coming from Western Europe. Only since 1965 have we opened the doors to really the rest of the world. But we vet all people. We make sure that they are not coming here to threaten us.
Don't tell that to people from Eastern Europe and China who came over to build the railroads and eventually the highways. It wasn't just 1965. I mean, we definitely have a sketchy past as to who we've invited into this country. But here's who we shouldn't let into this country. We shouldn't let people in who want to kill us and people who hate freedom.
And Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber hates freedom more than any Canadian who's ever lived. All right, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed also had a great dissertation on the poisonous toxicity of Justin Bieber. Yes. But to be completely honest, people who want to impose Sharia law violently absolutely abhor freedom. They are bad people. Is there a guaranteed way of vetting people and looking into their hearts? No. No more than a way we have of changing their hearts and minds.
So,
Therefore, you got to figure out a better process of keeping bad people out instead of keeping everyone out, because that gives you a false sense of security.
Until you figure out that better process, Kennedy, maybe it is okay to keep a group coming from this area where there's a lot of terror happening.
If that's what you want to do, but there's terror happening in Western Europe, like Belgium and the UK. Do you keep those people from coming in as well?
I think you pick the terror. Well, listen, I think the president is going to do what he wants to do. But Dana, let's bring you in. Pick the terror hotspots and say, until we find a better vetting system, maybe we hold off. Do you like or dislike that idea?
I guess it's not foolproof. I mean, it could help a little bit. I mean, if you're constantly narrowing down the chances, I think that's helpful. The point about that Mitchell, I think, was making that is very interesting is about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was saying that this is not something that they think is going to be done by the end of 2017. This is a lifelong, generational war. And we are talking as if, okay, well, if we do this, then we're going to be done, and then we can move on, and everybody can have a great Christmas holiday, and everything will be fine. This is just something that will last for our lifetime. And so Generation X, millennials, the baby boomers, all working together, generationally together, as you were saying.
Yes.
And the other thing is that even Khalid Sheikh Mohammed could not have imagined the parade of horribles that would exist after the Syrian refugee crisis. Because what he was talking about in terms of using immigration to try to spread the terrorism throughout the world, it was basically because we didn't act to protect the situation as it was, we put accelerant on the fire, and now Europe has a gigantic problem. Like the United States, a little bit more protected because of our policies, because of the oceans, but Europe is basically... Well, I was going to use a word that I won't use.
Oh, go use it.
No.
Oh, no.
Come on.
No,
we
because
have a
it's
bleep
mean.
button. We have a bleep button.
Don't get thrown in
No,
work
it's not
jail.
a bad word. It's mean word, and I don't want to say
Oh, in
it.
that case,
we'll
yeah.
We'll try and nudge you to maybe
I'll say it in a commercial break.
Can I be a little provocative with this? Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, we have this information. Call it information, call it what you want, opinion, but we have it because
Yeah.
we didn't drone him.
Yeah, no. We didn't take him down to the, a peaceful meadow and have cheese and crackers. Right. There was water involved, but it wasn't in a meadow. It was in a small room, and it was very quiet. It's a new world. The battlefield is Earth, and we got to remember the key word for ISIS.
Oh my God, that was a horrible movie.
It was John Travolta.
Oh.
But the key word for ISIS right now is technology. The next step is going to be remote-controlled cars and bombs and drones and mines. And there's a leaked memo from ISIS. They have leaked memos that Jen and Musa had tweeted from Arabic Al-Anon TV that there's 19 new machines that they've created to unleash some kind of modern terror, and they're almost all remote controlled, and they tie in with technology, and these are the things that we're going to have to deal with.
Okay, but here's my point about this is there's always going to be a workaround. We can find systems, we can have vetting processes, and we should have those. You know, you can't just let everyone in, and I don't think any rational person, and even libertarians would say that. However, there's always going to be a way, because now they realize it's too expensive to put forth a plan like they had on 9/11. So they're relying on people who are mentally unstable and morally bankrupt to do horrible things and create so much panic and so much fear. So what is the next thing they're going to do?
There's a common denominator between all these people who are going to perpetrate this terror. They're here, and they weren't likely born here, right? The issue is, are they coming to the country, and how are they getting here? And if we have A, open borders, and B, no vetting or minimal vetting, there are 110,000 refugees who are going to be settled in the United States this year alone. 110,000. Does anyone know that number? Because we had heard like 10,000 or 15. 110,000. I mean, that's a massive number.
If you're about 20,000 more than we usually get.
If you're 99.9% effective, you have somewhere around 110 terrorists that want to kill us.
But hold on, Eric. You suggest somehow that we are a bunch of idiots, that we don't already vet people. And I think you're insulting us as an American people when you suggest that we don't already take measures. And not only is it our measures, I must say international bodies get involved.
I never say we don't vet.
Of course we vet. So therefore, we're not letting everybody in.
It's just unfair to say we don't vet.
I thought you said we just let anybody in. We do not do that.
I said through the border. If the border's wide open and we let people in.
The borders are not open.
All right.
Well, the other thing is that we know that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was a liar as well. So that was one of the reasons brave people like James Mitchell were asked to do really difficult things and interrogations. And we ask our intel community to do really tough things. So he's there. They know that he lies. So then basically they trap him, and that's by giving him information. That's when Khalid Sheikh Mohammed realizes that we have captured other al-Qaeda leaders. So then he starts to talk. So what he did was use psychological terror to plant seeds for us. Now, I don't know all the things that he said were true or not true. We don't know. But one of the things we risk is that the psychological terror continues to push us in a direction that we risk not protecting innocent Muslims who would help us in this war on terror. And that's where the balance is going to have to come. It's a much more complex problem than just banning or not banning or vetting or not vetting. It's just really complex.
Okay, but you raise a really good point, and that is if you have people who are coming into this country, or they're going to Belgium or Germany or Switzerland or Turkey, and they're doing horrible things, there has to be an uprising within the Muslim community that squashes this, because people in this country, who tend to have traditional American values aren't going to change the hearts and minds. But if you have Muslims in other countries who don't want to be categorized as bad people, who are kept from traveling to the Western world, then they're the ones who have to work within their communities to change minds, and also to stand up and say, we're not all like this. And you don't hear that, but they would be much more effective at what ultimately has to happen, which is keeping people from being drawn to this murderous lifestyle.
That's why it's about targeting the radicalization.
Yeah.
And it's a long-term, very complex, generational war that we have to be prepared to put resources into, to recruit some of the best American minds, and to work with our allies overseas, because we are going to rely on them. Just like in the Vietnam War, we worked with the Vietnamese in order to help us protect ourselves and our national interests, and then there was an influx of immigration, and that was a good thing for our country. I'm not saying that's exactly going to happen here, but we know that we need their help, so we have to figure out a way to do both.
And I think we need this on several levels, both in terms of people in the Muslim community and in terms of Muslim states in the global war. But I just wanted to make a quick mention. So I went to some Broadway plays this week, so I've been walking around the neighborhood, if you will. And you see that the New York City police have out now people with automatic weapons, the bulletproof vest and like, added security, added counterterrorism on the ground. And I've read where this is true now in Chicago, L.A., Houston, Washington, D.C. during the Christmas season, in particular protecting against the possibility of that kind of, drive-by or
that's not just
for 15 years.
How outrageous, though, that they would use guns. My goodness, Juan. I thought yesterday you were telling me that guns were responsible for more horrible things than terror. And now you're going, thank God we have we have law enforcement out there with guns.
But of course I like law enforcement.
Yes. Okay, good.
All right. I have no problem with that, but I'm saying,
what about when law enforcement isn't there? What about a responsible citizen who is armed who can protect fellow citizens?
Like the one here, just in Times Square.
Absolutely right.
Or what about what you've all just pointed out? Where are the moderate Muslims? Where are the moderate Muslims?
We've had this argument.
We do it every day.
No, I know, but why isn't it? We have more terror. We have more death. We have more destruction. We have more Nices and Berlins and Brussels airports and Turkey, and it keeps happening, and you just don't hear it. You just don't hear that group saying, we vehemently push against this. We're not part of this.
I don't think, I understand. First of all, I agree with you that you need to hear more of this voice. Where I disagree with you is I think there are lots of people who are cooperating with American law enforcement in the Muslim community, in mosques, to try to combat this. And where I heard it was, sort of a sad cry this week was from refugees in Germany who said, suddenly we are being blamed, cataloged with this bad guy who perpetrated this horror, and we are just so grateful to be in Germany.
There's a longer-term question about this. Let's say, we kill every single person who's involved in ISIS. Just kill them all, and then there's some other new thing that happens. What about the reality of assimilation in a culture like this? Do you accept those whose values undermine the balance of freedom and security, who see Islamism as an ideology that is greater than our republic? Because that's a first for us. That is a first. We have assimilated all sorts of cultures, but none that says we are a superior ideological framework that we wish to. On a religious level or a legal level? On both. Well, it is. It's both.
Yeah, what he's talking about, they're intertwined, and that's when it becomes so problematic. But you also look at young men, and it happens to be people who are kind of bored, and they don't have a lot to do, and maybe they've got an anti-authority streak, and those are the most fertile ones that crazy moms reach out to and change and radicalize.
That was a very interesting block.